They have closed their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand. This is here we go. This section of the gospel is in between some parables in the Gospel of Matthew. The parables are all lined up. We're hearing actually that on Sunday, and now this week we're hearing them successively also as we just work our way through the Gospel of Matthew. But the parables, as rich as they are, and they have these powerful images of the reign of God and help us understand, God's vision for life. There's this little section like we hear right here in Matthew, and also it's in the other synoptics, where the apostles ask him, "Oh, why do you speak in parables, or explain to us this parable, but others may not understand it?" And it sounds on superficial reading that why didn't Jesus want people to understand? Why didn't he just explain things plainly? Well, it's not that. It's more that they don't want to understand. They don't want to understand. Remember, the scribes and Pharisees, they saw him as an enemy. They misinterpreted who he was, and to some degree, you might, his claims were huge. To say that he's God, to say that he's a son of God, I mean, that would be a stretch, but that's who he is. And so once they didn't like something, and some of it could have been jealousy because there were huge crowds following him. So some of it could have been jealousy, but it was also a different interpretation of what God's plan is, and that he is the Messiah, and that he is the Son of God. And because they disagreed with so many of those things, then they shut themselves off to everything that could be revealed. And so it is today, People who are hardened in their hearts about belief in God or faith, and even if they're not, even if it's, it could be that they're not even a hardened atheist. It could be that they're just kind of go, well, Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad, they're all basically the same, saying the same thing. Well, no, that's really not true. Jesus is making a very unique claim to be God himself. Not just part of the universe, but the ground of all being himself. That's a huge claim no one else has made. And he died and rose from the dead. No one else has claimed anything like that. I mean, there's something very unique about how we understand Jesus. C.S. Lewis, I think it was him who coined this expression. When we ponder who Jesus is and the world looks at Jesus, we can see him in a lot of different ways and say, well, is he who he really says he is? And C.S. Lewis says there are really three conclusions you can come to. Either he's lying. He just says he's God, but he's not really God, but he deceived his apostles. And down to the ages, billions of people. Billions. Well, that's a lot of deception. Is he a liar? Well, if he's not a liar and he claims to be God, another option is that he's a lunatic. He thinks he's God. And we've had people who've made claims of some kind of messiahship. The Branch Davidians, remember that? Those kind of groups. Or the Jonestown Massacre. Somebody who really thinks that they are something more than they really are. And we say they're crazy. They're misleading people. So, but, if you don't accept that he's a liar, and you don't think he's a lunatic, then you have one other option. He's the Lord. He actually is who he says he is. And there are some, even in Christian, some more progressive Protestant circles, there are those who say, well, he never actually said he was God. Well, excuse me, there are a number of places you can point to clearly where he does articulate who he is as God. He really is the Lord. And if that's the case, then we have to consider some amazing things about him. And I think here in particular, because it's the feast of St. Bridget of Sweden, here she was a mother of, can't remember how many children, 7 or 8 or 9, a big family. But also part of in a sense, royalty. Her husband was a lord in Sweden. So she was part of the court activities, but she was really critical of them because of the excess and all that. She lived a very simple, austere life herself and was a third order Franciscan, and after her husband died was able to give more attention to that kind of spirituality. But then she ended up founding the Brigantines, like we have in Oregon here. Brigantine, the fudge. We know the fudge. Most people know about the fudge. But we have the Brigantine Monastery here in Oregon. But she was a very holy woman, but she also had some remarkable visions. But I think she captures one aspect. If we really accept he's Lord, then we have to realize that here's God, the creator of the universe, the most vast, comprehensive notion we can have of God is still just a drop in the bucket compared to who God truly is. And at the same time, as St. Bridget says, here he is, the judge of all, and he allowed himself to be judged before Caiaphas and Pontius Pilate. And here he was, God of life, and he allowed his life to be taken from him for our salvation. It's really beyond our comprehension, the wonder of who God is. St. Bridget has that so beautifully articulated. But if I encourage you to read some of her visions or about her. But it's just an awesome mystery. If he isn't a liar or a lunatic and he really is Lord, then that demands something of us. And when we get that, then we pay attention to these parables. Lord, what are you teaching me? Help me understand. And that changes everything. But as long as we keep them at arm's length, we'll never understand. And Jesus isn't saying that he doesn't want people to understand. He's saying they just won't because they don't want to. And that's an amazing thing. For as powerful as God is, he still gives us our free will to choose to ignore him, and so then he can't get through to us. I mean, that's how powerful free will is. We can ignore the source of all being. Or, if we open our hearts, it's really up to us. And so let us use our free will, not just wisely, but generously, and search the beauty and wonder of God.